Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play the Final Fantasy Legend. In the last part we beat up a big red bird and now we get to continue on through more of the tower. But first you have to unlock this door with the magic of red. I actually do find a nice little detail that by this point actually the spheres all correspond to a colored magic from the main Final Fantasy series. White, black, blue, and red, though blue magic wouldn't be a thing until 5, so that was a bit ahead of its time even. Honestly though, it's around now where the tower's enemies start getting kind of brutal for the most part. Some of them are still pretty tame, but others can get kind of annoying, really. Also, did I actually mention when I maxed out Callista's strength? I forget if I did, but I did. And honestly, some of these floors are pretty linear, but we do have our first new enemy for the part, Gummies! Thankfully not the Gummy Bears, because I didn't like that show that much. 551 HP, weak to fire, but immune to para, weapon, and quake, so has a good amount of immunities to it. Still has melt, so it can drain HP from us. Bother, which is still useless, and stealth, so it can get stealth attacks on us. Although actually, I'm not sure if stealth actually works for the enemy. I know it works for us, but I've never actually seen an enemy get a sneak attack on me, from what I can recall. And next two enemies are Watchers and Warriors. Watchers have 454 HP, Gaze and Sea Gaze, I think. I'm not sure how that's supposed to be pronounced, but they're pretty vanilla enemies. And Warriors have 501 HP, they're weak to fire, and they have a bone axe and a sword attack, so they're mostly physical. However, since they're weak to fire, that means if you have a flame attack, they should go down with no issue at all. If I recall, this is one of the more common enemy formations for the next few floors, so hey, at least that means that there's actually some easy enemies coming up. And we get the meat of a warrior, which I never use. And we're immediately thrown into our next battle against a new 409 HP lizard-type enemies, which means they're technically dragon-type enemies, meaning the dragon sword can one-shot them. And they only have 2 attacks, nail and tail, so they're not very strong. Decent agility, though. Like 71, I think. These could be potentially annoying if they're with more enemies, because then they can get a lot of shots in while you're probably focusing on other things. But honestly, they're not that bad. And here we get a door. The door more or less allows you to travel back through any of the floors we've been to. Like, say we're on like floor 20 right now, I think. You can travel back to floor 1 anytime you want. However, you cannot travel to floor 21 unless you've been there. Before I continue on that little tangent though, next new enemy is a soldier, which has 501 HP and it has access to P-Sword, P-Blast, and Mirror. Mirror just increases its hit multipliers, but P-Blast is actually pretty annoying because it's one of the best abilities a mutant can get in the game. It targets all enemies for pretty decent damage, actually. But actually, yeah, as I was saying, well, first off, these guys. Boy, am I busy. Don't look it. Also, for some reason, a lot of the stairs at this point become escalators. I don't know why or how that works. Thanks to Ashura, we're rich! Huh. I hear that Ashura has made Creator powerless. Can it be? What the hell is a Creator? That's the first time we've heard about that. Either way, as I was saying, with the tangent with the door, there is actually a mutant ability that does the exact same thing that you could feasibly get at the beginning of the game, even though you're not supposed to get it until Endgame, called Teleport. And if you get that, well, that could be pretty useful. And here we get a Magnum, another upgraded gun. It's useful, I suppose. I never use it. Well, because I have other weapons at this point that I just prefer to use. And next to enemy, either way, is a Naga. Wasn't that the villain in the first Bakugan series? I forget. 454 HP lizard-type enemies, so I think they can be one-shot with the Dragon Sword. And they only have Tail and Strict. Not very annoying. They have decent mana, though, 77, which is odd, because they don't have any really mana-based moves, I think. And next new enemy immediately is a Wraith. Wraiths have 501 HP, they're undead, however, they're not weak to fire. They only in fact, they only have 1 attack, and that's Gaze. Very, very easy enemies. Earlier versions of this have a chill attack, but for some reason this one doesn't, which is odd, because you think endgame enemies would have elemental abilities that could, one-shot you. But no, they don't. Now, something that's always kind of bugged me about this part of the game is that it feels like there's not as many enemies to fight. Mind you, knowing my luck, it's just the fact that every enemy has the exact same encounter rate. I'm just always running into, the same 4. But that's just me, likely. But yeah, at this point, it's actually also around now that some of the battles start to take a bit. I know one for a fact that I edited out just because of time, even though I think it may have been a new enemy for all I know. I honestly forget. I edited it out because it was a battle that took 5 minutes, and that's not cool. In games where the generic battle length is maybe even less than a minute, the 5 minutes is a bit long. Also, keep in mind that door for later, I'll be cutting back here in a few moments. Next new enemy, though, is a Dragon 4, 501 HP, immune to Fire and Quake, has Nail, Flame, and Blind. So it could potentially be annoying just on the fact it can lower your hit percentages. That Flame attack, as usual, could be lethal if you have a Slime-type enemy, but thankfully at the moment, I do not, I believe. One thing I've always found odd about the dragon enemies, by the way, I should mention, since its name is Dragon, obviously you can one-shot it with the Dragon Sword, so use it. One thing I've always found odd about the dragon enemies is that I have sometimes some really, some good trouble running into them. Like, I forget, did we even see a Dragon 1? I don't think we did. I know we saw at least a Dragon 2 and 4, and I fought a Dragon 3 while I was grinding for the Minotaur meat in between, I mean, not in between parts, last part. So that's odd. Either way, this is a weird little tangent. This child looks dead. Oh boy, and I think that bookshelf doesn't have anything to say. Let's see what we got down this long bridge. By the way, you can run into enemies in here. Well, hello, another dead person. Found a diary. We barely made it to this shelter. We've run out of food and water, so we won't last much longer. Ken and Yuki, forgive me for leaving you. Akira, take care of your brothers. Creator, please look after them. By the way, I think this is the only time in the game this song plays. Either way, for talking to that rather depressing story, we actually get a nuclear bomb. It is a one-use attack item that does around, I think, 500 to 600 damage. And that's the only reason you go in there. There's no real plot significance to that, oddly enough. But they're starting to mention this creator guy a lot. I wonder who he is. Either way, in this treasure chest, I believe we get something that I never use. The Aegis Shield! They actually mistranslated it too, wouldn't you know it. I think it is the best shield in the game, but I just don't use shields in this game, so it's not really worth it to me. Though watch, knowing my luck, it's probably the ultimate weapon in the game that one-shots all enemies. Nah, that's not the hyper. Though if you, this is actually a good point to start using the hypers, because you can run into some pretty big encounters. Like Nagas, News, and some enemy, I forget what the third one is, I think it's Watchers. All in a row. Anyway, here's a library. Ashura is controlled blank by a secret door that gives us the flare book, actually, which is the ultimate spell in the game. I'd wait a bit before giving it to your mutant, because I'd recommend Stone for a bit around now. But give it to her as soon as you can, or him if you're using a male mutant, obviously. Because, yeah, if you're wondering why I recommend Stone, there's a magician-type enemy around here. I forget if I run into it or not, but stoning them is the best way to kill them. We cannot read this final word. Who controls Ashura? Ah, well that's convenient. That's a really sparse library, though. There's like 4 books that do nothing. Huh. And next to enemy is a white. Whites have 606 HP. They're undead, so as usual, they are weak to fire. But this one's actually immune to ice and status elements. It can nail ya, it can touch ya, or it can stealth ya. And obviously stealth is just the sneak attack thing, but touch is actually pretty annoying, because I think, if I recall correctly, that is a draining type attack that drains your HP and gives it to them. But thankfully, a couple of Balkans to the face will kill anything. As will melting on them, because melting off usually implies heat. And yeah. And I want to head up here before we continue to the right, because there's a random nice little peaceful place that actually kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy V for some reason. I don't know why. And there's a hut here that's actually pretty important. Let's see what we got in here. Oh, another old man that shares Ryo's sprite. Did you come from the tower? Yeah, we did. Then this is for you. And we get Excalibur. What is it? I was told to wait for a hero from the tower. You have finally come, and I have fulfilled my duty. And he dies. The Excalibur is not the ultimate sword in the game, but it's one of them, because it attacks I think it attacks a group of enemies, instead of just an enemy like a normal sword does. Though, like some other weapons, in fact a lot of other weapons, it has no attack power of its own. Its attack power is entirely dictated by your strength. Which means, you know, give it to a human, because you should have a maxed out human strength by now. Though, actually, one thing I actually really gotta give this game credit for is the amount of runs you can do with it, because you could do like an all-mutant run, an all-human run, an all-monster run, and anything in between. which leads to a lot of interesting little playstyles that you can do. You know, if anything, I can say for a fact, this game is very customizable to your playstyle. And next enemy is a wizard and a cockatrice. The wizards are the guys I recommend using stone against because they can beat them. Well, honestly, they're just annoying. Wizards have 454 HP. They have access to ice, fog, I don't know what that does actually, stone, death, which are the really two annoying ones because that's basically insta-kill, and cure. By the way, I nuked them, I know. And cockatrices have 501 HP. They're immune to quake. They have nail, petrify, stone, skin, warning, and stealth, so they can stone you pretty easily. Also, what we got just there, I believe, was the glass sword. Sorry, I was looking away from the screen for a second there. The glass sword is, technically speaking, the most powerful sword in the game. However, it's supposed to break after one use. Be careful, Ashura lives above. Indeed he does. Thank you, old man, who's for some reason here still. The thing about the glass sword, as I just mentioned, it's supposed to break after one use. However, I think that's actually bugged, because you have 50 uses with it. It is, honestly, the most powerful weapon you can use individually, so use it if you want to. Next new enemy, though, is an Iron Man. It's the exact same one we actually had. Iron Man has 551 HP, immune to change and damage, meaning, you know, elements mostly. And it has Kick, Bash, Flame, and Gas as the one we had did. So that's what the robot that our team is being led by looks like. Cool. Though, like I said, I think it was last part, it's technically more of a golem. Actually, its posture even reminds me a bit of the golem from Dragon Quest. Though, looking at the Iron Man's actual character design instead of just his posture, he reminds me more of a three-way mix of Regirock, Dog from Half-Life, and this weird robot guy from a show called Oban Star Racers. I don't know why that's what he reminds me of, but it does. Maybe it's the circular head. Probably, actually. Although, one thing I do have to say about Iron Man is that they have very good defense. 65 and 84 strength, too, so he can actually hurt pretty good. But, honestly, like most enemies, he'll fall down our path eventually. Also, hug the right here, because there's a pitfall that you can fall down. And falling down around here would suck. So you've made it this far! I'll make a deal with you. A deal? I'll give each of you a piece of the world. How does that sound? No way! We'll never work for you! I was just being nice. But now you've pushed your luck. I actually really like that line. Final boss of the game is Ashura, 2000 HP, undead type enemy who is immune to damage and change. Has access to 6 arm, 3 heads, the enemy that has the ability that has, you know, a glitched hit multiplier, gaze, flare, blind, and heal. So we can really put out the damage. However, because he actually has fairly low HP, all things considered, we can really put out the damage to him as well. I believe he's, I'm not sure if you can use the stun on him, actually. If you haven't, you might be able to. I suppose it'd be worth a shot, but honestly, for a final boss, he's pretty easy. He might be able to dish out the damage, but we can do the same. And he's down, but, you know, our main enemy might be down, but I keep on getting bugged by that bookshelf line. Ashura is controlled by what? Maybe that's something they were setting up for a sequel or something. And there's a door, and it's a pitfall, apparently. And then we died. There's a voice in the distance. Can you climb out? But we're back at Base Town? Okay. Having lost the armor for the first time in my life, I learned what's really important. Thank you. It was nothing. I'll have a baby soon and be happy. Congratulations! Oh, hey, it's Ryuo. Was Ashura an illusion, or what do you mean? You're not gonna tell us, are you, old guy? Either way, yeah, we're back in Base Town for some reason, and the shops have actually an updated inventory, too. Remember us when you leave for this world. Be brave. I won't disappoint you. Oh, hey, old guy. There's a road to paradise beyond the door. Who are you? Yes, finally, ask that question. What have I done? We look so much alike, yet we're so different. Jean's also a part of you. Jean, okay, that's very stilted dialogue. But yeah, this is actually more or less your final stock point, because obviously if you can't tell by the timestamp, we're not done the game yet. And this is the final place where you can buy stuff. I recommend buying a Sun Sword because, first off, it's just a powerful weapon in general. But it also instant kills any undead enemies, which is gonna come in handy coming up. That can replace anything you want, really. And then we want to get, I think, 2 Dragon Helms? No, a Dragon Helm. That's right, because Lucy has the headband. You can buy some other things if you want, but you don't need to, honestly. And if you want to... Oh, that's right. That's one thing I've got in between parts. You might notice that, obviously, we have a rod now. I got that in Amiyoko Town. That's to replace the cure book because the cure book was running out of uses. It's actually stronger, but it's a lot more expensive than a normal cure book. You can get it from the second shop at the end of Amiyoko, or a lot of other stores throughout the world. Either way, we have to do something a bit different here. The door is locked by the magic of 4 color. You need to use the spheres one last time in order to get into here. And they all break. If you actually use like the door to teleport back to the previous floors, you'll actually just fall through the pitfall again, I believe. And immediately into a new enemy against Scorpion, who's thankfully not telling me to get over there. Scorpion has 551 HP, is weak to ice, has 2 pincer, tusk, mirror, gas, and teleport. It's kind of odd that it happened that an enemy would have teleport. You think they would program that not to do anything or not even be a slot unless you had it, but it's there. And it's really easy. Now, before we head up into the normal door system, I do want to head west and grab something. Because over here we get the Ninja Gauntlets, which is more or less the best pair of gauntlets in the game for anyone, really. I just usually give it to Callista. Anyway, let's see what we got. Genbu? Oh, great. This game has a boss rush, doesn't it? Yep. We have to refight all 4 of the normal fiends, starting off with Genbu 2, 1500 HP, undead, so you can one-shot it with the Sun Sword, which is why I bought it. I mean, the change has Tusk, Gas, Shell, Bash, and Quake. Pretty easy, though, but we do want to get its meat for someone. Feasibly speaking, you could just stick with the monsters I have now for Endgame, but I just wanted to experiment around a bit and see what meat I got for who. And we got Genbu 2's meat, which I'm going to give to Kane for a ghost, which... This is actually the first time I've used a ghost. Usually I just stick with those 2 monsters till endgame. But the ghost is actually pretty good, because first off, it's immune to more or less everything, and it has raise, which is one of the few abilities that allows you to revive characters, without having to use one of their hearts. Which is really good. I think it's like one of the 3 enemies in the game that can get it. But if you can get it, I actually recommend it. It's actually pretty good for crowd control, too, because it has some decent attacks. I'd rather have kept the fireman in general, but it's pretty good, I'll admit to that. Anyway, the way that this part of the game works is that you're going around the outside of the tower, which takes a while, so for all redundant floors, I'm speeding it up. But not for random enemy encounters like Sandworm. 666 HP, immune to Quake and Ice, has Quake on it, so it's one of the few enemies I think we've seen with it thus far. And it also has Bite, Tail, and Sand. Pretty easy enemy, though. Part of me doesn't actually like this part of the game because of how redundant it gets, because you're going through like the same floors 4 to 5 times. Though I am showing the first time through every floor type. And at the start of every floor type, you can probably predict what's going to happen. You're going to refight another one of the fiends. Coming up on Seiryu 2 right here, actually. 1750 HP, still undead, so you can one-shot it with the Sun Sword. Immune to damage and para. Has Bite, Strict, Thunder, Tail, and Whirl. So if you have something that's weak to Thunder, that can potentially be very dangerous, but honestly, it's pretty easy. And I'll be honest though, people, this game doesn't have much of a credit sequence, so after this I'm actually going to start giving my little opinions on the game then. But I am going to give Seiryu 2's meat to someone, I believe. Yeah, to Envy for a Dark Rose, which, honestly, I should have kept it at Envy as what he was before, rather. Because it's a lot better. This thing has some good immunities, yeah, but it's only really useful for random battles. For boss fights, it's pretty pointless. I would have recommended saving it for some transformation for something later. But we do get the Arthur armor, which is the best armor in the game, which obviously I'm going to give to Callista after we fight this Salamander. Salamanders have 666 HP and have access to Nail, Tusk, Burning, and Flame, so they're immune to fire, obviously, but they are weak to ice, so if you have it, use it. And that's about it, really. But yeah, Final Fantasy Legend, on the whole, I think is a decent game, but I do have some issues with it. First off, I'm not a fan of weapon durabilities or spell charges. I can understand it for, like, a tactical game, but for, you know, full-out RPG like this, it's kind of pointless in the end, because almost any attack can take down any enemy for the most part anyway, so why have it, right? Though I can understand it from the resource management standpoint. The music of this game, I'll admit, is probably the strongest point, because there are some great tracks in this game. Albeit the game's soundtrack is pretty small, as is the game on the whole. It's actually a pretty short RPG. You could probably beat it in a day if you know what you're doing, too. My biggest complaint about it, though, is the fact of the story. Because each world has its own story, the main story, like the plot of the tower, barely gets focused on. I'll get back to that in a moment, though, after we kill OHKO, too. Who has approximately 2,000 HP is undead, so Sun Sword as usual. Immune to damage and para, has sword, ice, and ice sword, flash, and tornado. So if you're weak to ice, it's going to be troublesome. By the way, as I was saying, because each of the 4 worlds has its own mini plot that also doesn't get very well developed, the main plot of the tower gets barely any time to itself, which honestly not a fan of. Even Final Fantasy Legends 2 and 3, which by the way follow the usual Final Fantasy formula of not being related to the first game at all really, have much more in-depth stories, which I'm a bigger fan of. Thankfully, the game's difficulty curve is actually pretty standard. There's some very annoying random encounters, yeah, but since you can save anywhere, if you're saving after every battle, you shouldn't have much of a problem with it. If you want to play it, there are a good amount of ports, too. There's the one on the Game Boy, obviously. And then it's on the WonderSwan Color in Japan only, mobile phones in Japan only, and the Android in Japan only. There was also a re-release of this on the Game Boy, because obviously Square did the first release, but then Sunsoft re-released pretty much all the Final Fantasy games in like '98. Next new enemy, though, is a Spectre. Spectres have 606 HP, they're undead, but they're immune to Quake, Weapon, and Change. And they have Sleep, Ice, Stone, and Touch. So these guys are very much crowd control against us, since they have most status ailment attacks. Also, weird little quirk about this part of the game. Even though we're obviously going upstairs more and more, getting higher into the floor numbers, if you pause the game, it still says you're on floor 1 for some reason. Which is why if you look in the Final Fantasy Wiki, a lot of the enemies are listed as being on Tower Floor 1. And new floor type, which you can probably guess what this means. It's time for us to refight the final of the 4 fiends. Suzaku, too, rather. 2,500 HP, undead, so Sun Sword is still the way to go. Immune to damage and para, has Beak, Flame, Tornado, Blind, and Burning. So obviously, for a Firebird, if you have something that's weak to fire, that could be potentially lethal. However, thankfully, none of these 4 refights are that hard, actually. The one thing I do have to say about Suzaku's sprite, its beak doesn't look as much like a beak as it should. It looks more like a mosquito's proboscis. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not, though. Which is odd. And it's honestly always kind of weirding me out. Because admittedly, the sprite design isn't the best in this game. While the overworld graphics are actually pretty decent for early Game Boy, some of the battle sprites could have been a lot better looking. But I'll just mark that up as a product for the times. And Suzaku's dead again! Yay. There is one monster, by the way. Here we get the Masamune. It's pretty useless in this game. It has, I think, it's another strength-based weapon, but it's just not as good as the Glass Sword. There is one monster you can get around this point in the game called a High Slime, which is more or less the best slime-type monster in the game. 795 HP, maxed out mana, which is the biggest attraction to it, has Melt, Bother, P-Blast, Hypnos, Gas, Stealth, Para, and is immune to Para, Weapon, and Quake. And if you can get it, it's great. You can't fight it, you can only get it through monster transformation, but if you can find it, get it. And this is a change of scenery, by the way, that thing now acts as a healing pool. This must be the peak of the tower. Looks like a screensaver. Way to find the exit, by the way, just follow this river to the west. Let's see what we got around here. Oh, you're kidding me. Oh, you've gotta be...
Congratulations, I've been waiting for you. You're the first to finish the game.
Game?
Yes, it's a game I created.
What do you mean?
People did not know what courage and determination meant. So, I created Ashura to see what people would do.
You're crazy!
Ashura tested all of you.
So it was a game?
That's right! I wanted to see a hero defeat this evil.
We were all pieces of your design.
You understand well. Many have failed the test, but it was refreshing to see courage in the face of danger. I want to reward you for your accomplishment. I'll grant you a wish.
We didn't do it for a reward. Besides, you used us.
What's wrong with that? I created everything.
We're not things.
How amusing. You're trying to pick a fight with me. Are you sure? It's the destiny of mortals. Very well. Remember the greatness of my power.
Final boss of the game, who has a kick-ass battle theme, by the way, is our good old man, the creator. 5,000 HP, 99 strength, 200 defense, 99 agility, and 90 mana. Has the attacks left, repent, flare, revive, and oh, he hurts. He hurts a lot. However, he's not that hard, honestly. If you have the saw, it's a one-shot because of the glitch it has. And honestly, I've faced harder final bosses, because at this point, yeah, more than enough attacks that can do upwards of 300 to 500 damage, so he should go down in not that many rounds. Though, admittedly, one of my favorite Comedy Central bits that someone did is someone talking about this game on the Game Boy. I forget her name. But she more or less summarized that God is a tiny Amish man in a top hat in my Game Boy. And I love that twist. Though, honestly, I have a different theory about this guy. I'll be going over that after we beat him, though. But, yeah, overall, we've faced harder final bosses from Final Fantasy 1 and 2, even. Because this guy's not that bad. Love his character design, though. But I have to admit, I like this idea of having the final boss kind of stalk you throughout the game, just kind of watching you silently. This isn't the only game to do that. Like, I know for a fact Arch and Ellico 2 did it as well to an extent. But I honestly really like it when games do that. And we defeated God! Yay! That's a nice little death animation. And we won and get nothing for it! Yay! It's done. What are we gonna do now? Is there another world beyond? Shall we go there? It doesn't matter to me. Well, we didn't do too badly. That's right. We defeated all the evil. Let's go. Where? To our world! Okay, that's a cheesy ending. And from here on, the game kind of reminisces throughout what we've already done, even though I think in these scenes there's actually dialogue in the Japanese version. And yeah, that's Final Fantasy Legend. I already gave my opinions on it earlier this part. But yeah, one final thing I can say is that it is a decent enough game to play. I will recommend Final Fantasy Legend 2 and 3 over this, but if you want to play it, it's there. But yeah, the creator, I've always had a bit of a different theory about him, and I've seen other people like on YouTube comments saying almost the exact same thing. I don't think he's actually God. Like he said, I think he's more of a game designer. He even said it himself, defeating Ashura and the Four Fiends was a game he made for someone to accomplish. And Ashura, I guess, would either be the quote-unquote real final boss or maybe even a beta tester? And completing a game does make people feel good about themselves, so that would let players realize the determination it took to complete a game. Mind you, that could just be me really overanalyzing stuff, and knowing me, it probably is. And what do you guys think about that theory? That's what I've always thought. You guys probably people will probably disagree with me though, and I can completely see why, because that really does actually, now that I'm thinking, it sound like I'm overanalyzing it. Also, weird little fact, for some reason, the game doesn't keep track of what you were at certain points in the game, so you could be a potentially endgame monster in a place where you could not have that type of monster. Which is silly as hell, but I kind of like it. But anyway, as to what's coming up next, as you may have noticed, we've been revisiting all sorts of franchises and such recently, and we're kind of doing that with the next game that I'm doing, but it's not a franchise I've touched upon before, it's a genre. We're going back to a superhero game, but not one I've touched before. We are going to the PlayStation N64 Dreamcast era for this, and from that alone, you guys might know what little game we're going to be visiting, because it's honestly a really good game. And yeah, now I'm kind of out of things to talk about for these last 41 seconds. Great. But yeah, I look forward to my next LP. Thank you guys for watching. This has been a fun little adventure. Admittedly, a bit more grindy than I would have liked, because this game is a bit more grindy than I remember if you want to get, like, max out your stats pretty quickly. But Final Fantasy Legend 2 is probably the worst with that in my eyes still. And actually, that's a thing. Will I ever do the sequels? Probably. I do like Final Fantasy 3 a lot. Final Fantasy Legend 3 a lot, rather. Final Fantasy Legend 2, that's probably going to be the big chore to get through, because that game is a bit longer than this and a lot more grindy, and a lot harder in general, too. So, that'll be a when I do it kind of thing eventually, I guess. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great night, take care, and I'll see you guys for some web slinging action. See you guys then.